The federal government, through the Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Senator Heineken Lokobiri, on Monday convened a crucial meeting with key stakeholders in the nation's oil sector. But I'm joined now by my guests to discuss the recent tensions in the oil sector. I'm joined by an energy expert, OLABODE SOWUNMI. Thank you very much for coming on the program today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
Finally, it seems as though there just might be, an end to the back and forth that we have witnessed lately. What are your thoughts on the development so far, especially talking about the meeting that has been convened by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources?
Okay, thank you. I think first and fundamentally, we as consultants and as industry stakeholders tend to look at things a bit different. So for us, it is not so much as Dangote or even the regulator. It is about parties to the whole transaction and parties to the framework of the industry as we speak in Nigeria. It should be understood that the industry is a bit more than Dangote and the regulator. So what is important for us is that we have a system, a structure that can work independent of parties. One of the reasons why they say Nigeria is weak instead of institutions is because institutions tend to be overshadowed either by individuals or by systems of people. And what is important for us is that be it a small player, if it were not Dangote, be it a big player, they should be able to get through the system and get justice. That is when for us the system works. So the facts that are at play are the things that we need to look at, not the individuals that are there. And it is based on those facts that are at play that we can now be able to say this is what ought to be done or ought not to be done. And then Nigerians themselves can judge who is right or who is wrong.
Okay, from what you have stated, you're saying it has to be about the facts and not the individuals involved. So looking at the facts now, what does this entire scenario say about the Nigerian oil and gas sector?
Okay, so it's a long story, but let me just start from a bit as of January this year. So as of January this year, even Dangote himself was still an importer of diesel. And then I understood that there was a meeting between the regulators and the key marketers sometime in February or March. And basically, they were trying to set up a standard for the importation of fuels. Now, it should be understood that as at 2007, the Nigerian SON came up with a standard for fuel importation in Nigeria, which was much higher than what we could afford. And in the process of implementation, the NNPC advised the government that because we already had a burden of subsidy, were we to implement that in standard, not only would the prices go up, there will also be a lot of scarcity. So there was to be delayed implementation of it. So over time, there were gradual movements towards that. But one of the things that did actually now give it a catapult was that the ECOWAS heads of state met and decided that at 10 million PPA, that's million per metric ton, that was going to be the standard for the whole of West Africa. The one that SON had put was at 5. Now, when that happened, that was during the Jonathan era, there were gradual movements towards the implementation, and one of the hindrances was also the fact that there was no a regulator that was dedicated to it. So come in the PIA, and a dedicated regulator came in, which is in this case the NMDPRA. So in that March meeting, the meeting was to be on the fact that we needed to increase the standard of our importation. The marketers interpreted it as being a bias for Dangote that was about to start producing. And as a result, they protested. In fact, there are letters that was written by various associations, including Batman and all that, accusing the regulator of being partial to Dangote refinery. That was as at that time. But however, owing to the nature of Dangote refinery and all that, and its strategic nature and the thing in the news, he started production. When he started production, there were some complaints to the regulator about his practices. One of the complaints was that These independent marketers has over the last 20 years built depots. They built tank farms along the coast all across Nigeria. Dangote refinery had insisted that he's not going to sell to them through those tank farms, but only through tankers. The implication of that was that all the people in that area, whether employed and all the facilities there, were going to go moribund. But the regulator still did not do anything major, or in fact did not do anything. But there was now a complaint by one of the major producers, I think it was Shafa in this case, who claimed to have bought 2 vessels, that's shiploads of AGO from Dangote, and within a day of buying it, Dangote crashed price from 1,000. They bought it at 1,100 naira per ton, and Dangote crashed price to 800. So they interpreted it as a calculated attempt to ruin their business. And with that, there came another energy from the marketers to the regulator that this ought not to be. So this now led to another meeting between the refiners as well as the refiners as well as the importers, and that was where there was a lot of back and forth, and they came up with certain conclusions with respect to what will be done next. That apparently did not go well with the Dangote group, and that is at the root of the issues. It's just that this is a bit of a conservative industry where a lot of things don't come into play, but there are a lot of issues among stakeholders which is the reason why some of all these things are taking place. Well
said there. I have been speaking with OLABODE SOWUNMI, who is an energy expert, and we will be going on a short break now. When we return, we will be looking at the specific counterclaims that Dangote has, brought out regarding, the allegations by the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, the claims and counterclaims. We'll be looking at the specifics. So do stay, and we'll be back after the break. And you're still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we started a conversation on the back and forth between Dangote refineries and the NMDPRA. But I still have my guest here with me, who is an energy expert in the person of OLABODE SOWUNMI. Thank you again for coming on the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
You have touched a bit on what happened before we got to this point where there was finally an escalation. But I would like for you to talk to issues around, do I say the NNPC stakeholders, the issue around the NNPC stake. I would have thought, that this matter escalated at the point where Dangote came out to say that the NNPC no longer had about, 20% stake in the refinery, which led to where we currently are now. But I'd like for you to provide more insight into, that specific angle of the discourse. We're talking about how the NNPC lost its stake in Dangote refineries.
Well, from the beginning, the whole transaction has been shrouded in mystery. And that's the reason for things. You don't just lose money. So there has to be a reason for losing it. So in the first place, we need to look at the contract terms, the contracts that ensured that $20 million, which accounted for the stake in the Dangote, cannot suddenly become 7%. There must be a basis for it. The NNPCL violates certain aspects of the contract. If they did, what did they violate? You understand? And how was the deduction or the reduction, how was it calculated? So there needs to be more, because from the books, from the audited report of NNPC, there is an indication that $20 million did come to Dangote. So if the money came in, which means as part of investment in terms of cash, so how did it become 7%? That's something for them to answer. You understand? And that's something for we as Nigerians to keep knocking until we get answers. 20 million should not just become 7. And it's not 1,000, and neither is it naira, it's millions of dollars. So there needs to be proper answers to that. And we cannot make an inference whether it's right or wrong until we get the facts of the matter. But it's incumbent upon everybody that is involved, particularly even the National Assembly, to do an investigation to find out how that came to pass.
Well, I do understand that there are currently, investigations into that issue by the House of Representatives. But let us look specifically now at, some allegations made by the NMDPRA regarding specifically the quality of, diesel produced by Dangote refinery. How significant are these claims?
Well, there are a number of issues. One of the facts is that, except we have detailed information in terms of what is happening in the refinery, you cannot actually speak to it. So it's not everybody that has access to the refinery, and it's a private property. So we don't expect everybody to have access to it. But there are some facts that we can look into. There is the regulatory or legal aspect, then there is the science aspect. Dangote is buying his crude from the U.S. axis, the WTI, the Western basket. That particular set of crude, unlike ours, is very high in sulfur. Ours tend to be the sweet crude. Theirs is called sour. It's sour because sulfur is not really needed in the process. It's a pollutant. So when during the combustion of petrol or whatever, for those that are rich in sulfur, the sulfur mixes. It forms a compound, either hydrogen sulfide or SO2. That SO2 mixes with oxygen in the atmosphere and the hydrogen from the hydrocarbons to form H2SO4, which is sulfuric acid, or H2SO3, which is the milder form of the sulfuric acid. And when that goes into the atmosphere, it mixes with rain and forms acid rain. Now, that being a major factor, which is one of the reasons, that's one of the concepts behind sustainable energy, the fact that they don't want petrochemicals again and all that. Those are some of the things that are behind it. So for that, the Dangote refinery, for them to erase the sulfur content, they need to have a desulfurization unit. That desulfurization unit is not a bespoke equipment. It's not something you plug and play. It is something that is designed and then they fit into the place. It takes a year to 18 months to fix. As of today, I don't know about tomorrow, but as of today, the refinery does not have a desulfurization unit, which means from a scientific basis, it is largely possible that there's a lot of sulfur content in their finished product. If that is true, then there are issues with respect to the quality, but that needs to be verified.
Then I'd like for you to, juxtapose the allegations by the NMDPRA and the response we did get from Dangote.
So like I said, I don't want to pick on names and pick on people. I just want to explain the issues and then people can make up their mind on what it. So what I'm saying is that based on the way the refinery is set up and based on the scientific process, it is very likely that there's a lot of sulfur content in the refined products of the Dangote refinery, pending when there's a desulfurization unit installed. If that is the case, then the quality is suspect. If that is what NMDPRA is holding on to, they may have a point. If it is not, then they don't have a point. But it is incumbent, you understand, upon us to get a verifiable sampling of the product to know how sulfur was removed, because the sulfur doesn't disappear. So those are where the issues are. So what I'm just basically saying is that there isn't appropriate transparency in the whole thing. So it's possible that it is the sulfur content that NMDPRA is holding on to. If that is the case, they may have a point. It is also possible that there may be other issues. Because I'm not in NMDPRA and I'm not privy to the thinking and the dealings, then I can only guess based on, because my job is to analyze the industry and analyze the issues. That's why I've explained the scientific process. That if this scientific progress is different, then they may need to explain what they meant. But based on what is available now, there's a high chance, very, very high chance, that the products coming out of the Dangote refinery is rich in sulfur, which makes it a pollutant.
Well, I'll leave that at that, since you said, it's left for our viewers to, dissect that for themselves regarding the sulfur content. But let us touch on another issue now, that is the monopoly concern, which is not a new term. I mean, we've heard this over and over and over again. And I believe this is one of the first or few times we've heard Aliko Dangote himself, address that issue. But what are your thoughts on, that particular allegation, talking about the monopoly concerns? And what impact would you say that this has on the industry moving forward?
Okay, so the FCP, Federal Consumer Protection Act, defines a dominant player in any industry as a player that has more than 40% of the market share. That is the law. So that is the law. So there's a difference between what is in dictionary and what is the law. The law says any player that has more than 40% of the market share is dominant. So the word monopoly is an extant term. It's an English term. So if you look at the refinery operations, when you look at the amount that the Walter Smiths and the other refineries are producing, they're producing 25, some 65, 50, that kind of thing. Dangote is producing 650, which means that he has more than 90% of the market share. That, according to the law, makes him a dominant player, which attracts attention. So people may, because basically it's always good to stay with the facts, the things that are verifiable, the things, so that we don't get beclouded with sentiments. The sentiments are why wrong decisions are made. So if that is the law, there are two things. It's either they change that law or they look for a way to fall within that law. The Section 31 of the Petroleum Industry Act says that the NMDPRA is obligated to promote competition. They are obligated. It says shall. The word there is shall, which means it's not discretionary. They must promote competition among refinery operators, specifically said refinery operators and and all that there. So if there are players who have been complaining in the absence, and the back door to the regulator of being biased against one player and threatening to lay down tools and carry machete and all that, it's just normal that at some point they will want to do certain things to balance everything. So that's what the law says. The law defines it as that, and he has above that. So it's for people to decide what it is.
I like that you're being more particular about the facts and not the sentiment like you stated. But now let us talk to issues around the steel production halts. It was an aftermath of the entire allegation around monopoly and him monopolizing the market, where he has come out to say that he has halted plans on steel production. But the question now is, what message does this really pass, in the area of the broader industrial and economic landscape, and also foreign investment? What sort of message does it pass? Does it pass a positive or negative message?
Anybody can choose to do business, and choose not to do business is a fundamental right. I think we are reading too much into it. The fact that he said he has altered it does not mean he will not come back. People do business not because they are civil society. They do business for profit. The primary reasons for doing business is for profit. So if he has looked at his own set of circumstances and the circumstances of his shareholders, and he believes that he will not get profit from it, and he decides to stop, that is a personal decision. The IOCs, international oil companies, have decided to move out of onshore and move offshore. That is a business decision. Certain people have taken over locally. It's still a business decision. We cannot say that because people choose to do business or choose not to do business, that we will now be questioning our own selves. No, you cannot really be subjecting somebody's fundamental human rights to reason. You understand? For example, you have a right to freedom of speech. Freedom of speech includes freedom not to speak. So if they ask you a question about something and you choose not to speak, it does not have to be an issue because it's a fundamental right. So it's freedom of association. So if he chooses that, yes. If for any reason the government believes that they may have wronged him and all that, that becomes personal issues or people in government, because government is a phantom in terms of size and all that. So if people had wronged him, it is very possible somewhere along the line they will reconcile. And that is life. We make friends, we move on and all that. But personal issues, sentiments, should not be policy directions. The fact that I choose to go into a business is personal. The fact I choose not to do that business is also personal. There is no law that can force me to do a business. And there is no law that can force me to be friends with people. You cannot legislate brotherhood. If people have issues, let them have their issues. Let them sort their issues out. Their issues does not have to become national issues.
But there has been, allegations, and I believe there is also quite factual, regarding the fact that some international oil companies were selling crude to Dangote at inflated prices or refusal to even sell to him. So are you by any means saying that all of this didn't play out, trying to stifle...
Where did you get that information from?
Trying to stifle, the operation of the Dangote refinery.
Where did you get that information from?
No, let's hear from you now.
It's not possible. It's not why? Because crude is it's a commodity. It's like you have gold. It's like you have cocoa. It's sold at a standard price. So because Dangote himself did not say anybody is refusing to sell crude to him. He said that people are sabotaging him. That is a victim. So all these issue of people refusing to sell crude to him are extrapolations on social media. So why would anybody... what has happened is that he had wanted to get a percentage of Nigeria's share from his crude oil production, which will have meant that it will have been made available to him at a lower than market price. But that could not even happen because of our obligations and certain issues with respect to that.
So some might say that his demands were valid. Do you agree with that?
Based on what? Okay, you say his demands were valid. Based on what? What makes it a valid demand? A private company coming to demand to do transactions from another commercial entity, and the commercial entity says that we are not able to meet your demand. What makes it valid?
I mean, saying that there has been a lot of conversations about, finally refining our crude here in Nigeria, and then finally a refinery about to, take off. Wouldn't you rather that Dangote refinery is given all the support that it needs,
but why are you thinking,
finally begin operations?
So the issue is that why do you think it's not given the support? Because you see, first of all, when we make these things, it's first of all important to understand how the industry works. You understand? Somebody who comes into a TV station and demands that he has something that is so important, he must go on air immediately. He has not spoken to the editor. You have not heard what he wants to say. But he says what he wants to say is so important, he must go on air. There's a way the system works. You need to understand how the industry works. When all the crude that we produce, not all of them belong to Nigeria. There's an amount that goes, because they are joint venture things. We didn't invest money into the drilling. People invested money. So there are contractual obligations into it. Out of what we produce, there's a part that does not come to us. Then number two is that the previous governments have already made forward sales on some of those things, which means that out of the amount that we produce, more than half of it we cannot even touch because we are using it to pay the loans that we have taken in the past. Then it is from the ones that remain, which is maybe like 200,000 plus. It's from there that you need to buy medicine. It's from there that they need to pay staff salaries. It's from there that is that what you should give to Dangote? So that's why I said when they say it's valid, what makes it valid? You cannot be making an argument in a vacuum. You need to understand the whole picture. And one of the biggest challenges is that people who are not experts are giving expert opinions. People are giving strong opinions without an understanding of the fundamentals. Do they understand the industry? Do they understand what is at play? Do they understand what these issues are? No.
So it's important that, people go back to the laws and regulation.
Yes, but more importantly, Dangote is a new entrant into the industry. This is a mature industry, a balanced industry. This is an industry that has produced service people. I'm not talking about products. Most of what we have in Nigeria is products, but these are people that produce services that are exported. So we have Nigerians in the oil industry who provide services in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Angola, in Qatar, in those places, and they are paid well, and they export staff and they import people. That is the industry he's coming into. He is a new entrant. He also has to understand that there may be people that know about the industry more than he does. The industry is conservative, so it's not the one where you'll be hearing from everybody all the time. There are many things that play, so he has to engage the system. Whichever way it is, he has to engage the regulator because he cannot operate outside of regulation. Look, you have a regulator in the broadcast industry. It's called the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission. Can you monitor your airways in spite of them? You may disagree with their analysis, you may disagree with their findings, and when such a thing happens, there are resolutions and ways to go about it. For example, you can go to court, you can approach the National Assembly, you understand, but there are options. But the way to disagreeing with a regulator is not becoming a law unto yourself. That's not how civil society works. That's not how a balanced society works. So at the end of the day, because basically what he's going to say is that, are we going to say that Dangote is a law unto himself, everybody else follows regulation and laws?
Well, let us look at the future prospect of the sector, talking about having seen, the current challenges that we have seen. What then are, the future prospects as to this major investment? Now, talking about Dangote refinery, what are your expectations? Peradventure, these issues are resolved. What should we expect, moving forward?
There are no issues in that extent in the industry. This is just a case of, these are things that could have happened behind closed doors. And we have had issues like this that have happened in the past. What has happened is that issues that ordinarily should be sorted out between the regulator and the ministry and all that are being made public, and people are hearing for the first time, and they expanded. So the industry itself is not threatened in that extent. I mean, you have not heard something from Shell, you have not heard anything from Chevron. Those ones are doing their business, you understand, and they're not even intervening, even though they are directly or indirectly connected. You get, at least with respect to the allegations of them refusing to sell products, none of them has said anything. You get, because it's not really an issue. So what is important going forward is that Dangote refinery will get full completion and get their license to operate. When they get their license to operate, they will operate for a few months. There will be whatever imperfections or bugs are in their system, they will clean it up and all that. They will start exporting majorly, which they've been doing. And then those that are focused on Nigeria will be focused on Nigeria. Dangote has three main issues that the competition are complaining about. And that is why the issue of dominance becomes a major issue, at least with the consumer protection. The first is that he's charging in dollars. He's not charging in naira. Two is fellow competitors. The second is that he is selling at a higher rate to Nigerians than he is selling to foreign people. Those are facts. The foreigners are buying at a discount of $35, $40 per metric ton. The Nigerian marketers are buying at a premium plus $10. In other words, those ones are getting minus 35, the other ones are getting plus 10. And what has now been happening is that some of them have been going to buy from these marketers. Those ones will sell to them at minus 25, and they'll still arrive at, let's say, minus 10, and still make more profit than buying from it. Those are complaints that were made to the regulator.
Unfortunately, our time is far spent, but I have been speaking with OLABODE SOWUNMI, who is an energy expert, and he has been speaking to, the controversy between Dangote and the NMDPRA. Thank you very much for all the insight you've given to us today on the program.
My pleasure.
This is where we say our goodbyes, but join the conversation on social media. Let us hear what your thoughts are on the discourse for today. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.